go ahead and make your way to your seats. We're going to go ahead and get the afternoon started. We have a packed agenda. Our team hopes that you really enjoyed lunch, connecting with new friends and old friends, and I have the privilege of introducing our last A of the AAA threat, Dr. Amy Noel Parks. Amy is a very best friend of early math and has been with us from the start. She has worked alongside us to have us or help us really think about joy in elementary classrooms across the state. So without further ado.
All right, hello everyone. Super happy to be in front of you for what I hope is not the last time. So I'm talking today about evidence-based and research-based practices, and more specifically, why just thinking about what is good research isn't enough. And one thought I had this morning as I was listening to Angela and Allison talk is that so often evidence-based and research-based gets used as, let's say, a hammer to sort of force people into compliance. And what I want to do today is give you some tools for pushing back and asking some questions. Because one thing I would say is if someone is saying to you, this is what the research says, either they have not read enough research or they are trying to snow you. Because it is sort of like if you were in a meeting of principals and they said, this is what the teacher says. The teacher says we should begin every day with art instruction. The teacher says recess is better before lunch, right? There are many, many teachers who have many different perspectives and many different things work in many different classrooms, and we would never assume that one perspective carries all of that. The same is true about research. Oh, am I? Okay, so what I want to do is start with another Slido. And what I'd like you to write in here is when people talk about research, good research in your context, what do they mean? So here I'm not asking you, what do you think good research means? I'm asking you, what do people say good research has to be? Go ahead and fill that out. And go ahead, I'm not going to read these out to you, so as you're doing it, go ahead and read them on your phones. Okay, longitudinal cohort studies, evidence-based, data over time, evidence-based, which is sort of the same thing as like just saying it's research. So one thing I've been hearing a lot in the state, in both conversations about literacy and conversations about mathematics, is it only counts as research if it's a randomized control trial. And what that means is it's a very large study, which came up over here. People are, or children are, randomly assigned to intervention and control groups, and that the way the intervention is delivered is really tightly controlled. So we can say that the intervention is the thing that caused the change, right? It's not some other thing that's going on. But what I want to dig into today is that is only one way of thinking about good research, and we're in trouble if it's the only one. One of my favorite scholars is named Fred Erickson. He actually taught at MSU for a while. But one thing he said in one of his articles was, the presumption is that once we had certain evidence of the outcomes of a set of practices, we could then replicate that model of practice in many other places. Fidelity of implementation is essential in this process of scaling up what works in school reform. The exact copying of best practices that are easily exportable on a large scale. If teachers and building principals will only do what they are told to do, adopt research-based practices whose efficacy somewhere else was proved by scientific research. So much of the research paradigm coming into schools is based on this model. I'm sure you have heard about fidelity of implementation. I'm sure you have heard about best practices. I'm sure you have heard about scaling up. There are a number of problems with this model. One of the big ones is the way it de-skills teachers and principals who are in buildings with their kids, who know their context in ways the people who did the research never could have done. So this is my entire point today, and my point right now is not to say that research cannot inform your practice. Of course it should inform your practice the way all kinds of things inform your practice. But it should not be the only thing that informs your practice, because it doesn't make room for the knowledge of the people who are there. And like in the same way that Angela was talking this morning about, if we want kids to learn math, then their thinking needs to be centered in the classroom. If we want teachers to learn to teach, then their thinking has to be centered in the schools. It's the same model of learning. Okay, so I want to take a little minute. This is what I'm going to do first. I just borrowed this from this morning just so we can stay on the same topic. So thinking about, like, of course there are millions of things we want teachers to learn, but since we're talking about this morning, we're going to do this here. Thinking about engaging children in the reasoning of others. So this is one thing we would like teachers to do. And so what I would like to do now is show a video where we think about, if you showed this video to teachers, what is it they could learn from engaging kids in the reasoning of others? If you were with us in May, you've seen the end of this video, but I'm going to show the beginning. And to my friends at Message Makers, we're going to watch for like 2 minutes, and then I'll call it if the video is longer than I want to show. This is a preschool classroom. The kids are working on counting and graphing in the hallway. All right, go ahead.
So the first question I want to know is, what do you have at school today? Do you have a glove or do you have a mitten? And the way you're going to answer that is you're going to get in your locker and pull out one of your gloves or mittens and come add it to our chart. And we're going to compare and see what we have more of. We're not going outside. See? They're putting their gloves and their mittens on the chart. And we're going to go up in a line. We're going to see what we have more of.
I got one of my
There's
small
one,
mittens
there's
out.
one. Ooh, mine has fingers, so I'll add it to this side.
Hey, I have one.
What do you got?
Two.
Let's see what she's got. Does yours have fingers? Let's see. Open it up. Does it have fingers? No? So does it on the mitten side?
No, it doesn't want the two.
She's got to get her shoes back on. She was confused. I think she thought we were going outside. But we're staying in. Do you want me to put it on?
No.
You want to do it? Okay. While she puts her mitten on, let's count how many
doing it.
gloves we have. She will. She's going to get her shoes on. Let's count how many gloves we have while we wait for her. Okay. Can you count and tell me?
5. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So how many are there? 4. We counted 4 gloves. How many mittens do we have right now?
2.
2. But Massachusetts going to add 1. How many will it be then?
3.
3. Let's put one on, Mace. Can you put your glove on? Can I do? No. You know what I can do?
What?
I can draw a picture of her glove because she isn't comfortable putting it on. Now can we see Maze's glove?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can pretend that that's your glove, and that way you can still hold them. So we have how many here? I forgot.
4.
4. And how many here?
3.
3, because we have to count Maze's glove now too. 1, 2, 3. Which side has more? Yeah, this
All
one
right,
has
can you
more.
stop it
Which
there?
one has less?
All right, I'd like you to take just 1 minute at your table and talk about what teachers could learn from watching this beginning part of the video. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to have us come back together. Is there anyone at any table who said, there's absolutely nothing that teachers could learn from watching this video because it's only for kids, it was not a large-scale trial, they were not randomly assigned to this intervention, there was no formal assessment, I have no scores, so how is it possible that anyone could learn anything from this? Yeah. So when people talk about good research, they need to specify what they mean. So research that is based on close observation of small groups of kids is really good for answering questions like, how do we teach like this? What do we do when a little girl refuses to put her mitten on the paper when that was my whole lesson, right? A large-scale study is not going to tell us about that because there are not going to be children reacting in that way all over the country, right? This is a one-off. And if we want to think about how to do the work, we need to engage with research that gives us this close-up view. Research that is large-scale, randomly assigned is really good at saying, does a specific intervention have an effect? Which is one question we can ask. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad question, but it is definitely not the only question, and we are leaving a lot on the table if that's all we rely on. Okay, so rather than take you through a qualitative study, I just want to use this video and sort of imagine it's part of a bigger study. So if this were a qualitative study, the research question I might ask is, how do pre-kindergartners support each other's understandings of mathematics? And then I might video record small groups of mathematics in 2 different classrooms for an entire year. So I end up with 60 videos of this. And then I'm going to go in and look closely at the way kids interact with each other. When do they ask each other questions? When do they build on each other's ideas? What does the teacher do to support those things happening? And then I'm going to tell you about it. That would not prove that this is what would happen wherever you do it, whenever you did it, right? But what it would do is give you an image of practice where you could start to think about, what can I learn from what was happening in this place? And in what ways is my space similar to or different from this space that might shape what I take from it? So with research, the research is produced, but there's also a consumer, a reader of the research. And the way you make sense of it is actually really important. And the research doesn't stand alone from the person who is making sense of it. So pre-K teachers, K teachers, might get a lot from this video. 3rd grade teachers might get a little less. High school teachers might get nothing, right? The context matters. Okay, so I want to use some researcher words. And my goal in doing this is to give you language to talk to people when they say, oh, but this is research-based, or this is good research. So there's generally 3 big categories that we think of when we think about whether research is good. The first one is generalizability. And this is how applicable are the findings of this study to other people and places. And when people are out there saying, oh, we need randomized controlled trials, they're usually thinking about generalizability because these are big, big studies, lots of kids, lots of places. We're controlling all of the possible things that could vary. We can say, if this had this effect here, it's probably going to have this effect there. It's very, very generalizable. But generalizability isn't the only question to ask about research. We can also ask, is it reliable? How likely is it that another researcher doing the same work would find the same things? And then the last one is it valid? How well does the research align with our context and our goals? And this is the one that I feel like people are forgetting about. We are thinking about whether the research is generalizable. We are not thinking about whether it's valid. And so in quantitative research, which is these big studies, the way generalizability works is I do this large-scale study, I randomly assign people, and I can say, this is going to be true for almost everyone, right? Qualitative research generalizability works a little bit differently. Like sometimes people will say it's not generalizable, but I don't think that's exactly it. It's not generalizable to populations. I'm not going to say, because this happened with this group of pre-Kers in Michigan, it's what would happen with pre-K kids in California, or it's what would happen with second graders. But we can do what people have called naturalistic generalization. So if you think about your work as a teacher, if you have a child in your classroom who is having trouble with the division algorithm, or who is having trouble learning to read, you probably don't think, well, 60% of kids respond to this, so that's what I'm going to try. You think, where have I seen this problem before? What other child have I taught that had this similar issue? What other child have my colleagues taught that have had this similar issue? What children have I read about who have had this similar issue? And this is where qualitative generalization comes into play, because every story I put in my head as a practitioner builds my repertoire. And I have now a bigger, richer repertoire to respond to the people in front of me. If we think about reliability in quantitative and qualitative research, reliability in quantitative research is really about building identical widgets. If you do this exactly the same way every time, you will get exactly the same result. And if that happens, it's reliable. Qualitative research is reliable when we understand the path the researcher has taken. So like if you look at the map, I can see the destination. I can see that there are alternative ways to reach the destination that might be equally valid, better, worse. But either way, I understand the path the researcher took. That's what makes it reliable. And then last, validity, which is where I want to spend the rest of my time. In quantitative research, we think of it as valid when it has accounted for all of the variables. So we have controlled the time of day that it happens in, and we have a good assessment measure that measures what we're actually talking about. And we have had really specific mathematics content that we're looking at. And if we do all of that, we would say it's valid. With qualitative research, and this is a shout out to me as a baby teacher when I was a participant in a qualitative research study, we say it's valid when we have a rich description of the context, when we can see the context's relationship to our own, and when it aligns with what we want to do, what we are trying to accomplish as an educator. And so in general, this is not universally true, but in general, quantitative research is very good. Quantitative research is very high in generalizability, and it's much lower in validity because, well, one, just on the very basic premise, quantitative research relies on the idea that you control everything about the intervention. And if you have ever been in a classroom, you know that one thing that is very hard is to control everything about anything. So as soon as you take it out of an experimental context, it becomes much less reliable, which is why we see studies of things that like work really well, and then 5 years later they're working nowhere because they were generalizable but not valid. Qualitative research tends to be lower on generalizability. We can do this naturalistic generalization, but we can't talk about populations, but very high on validity because it gives us enough details about the context that we can make connections to what is the same or what is different. This is one of my quotes from an early childhood scholar. He says, developmental psychology is the science of the strange behavior of children in strange situations with strange adults for the briefest possible periods of time. And this is true of a lot of research, not just in early childhood, but in education. So because it is so expensive to do studies with large groups of people to control everything that's happening, they tend to be very short. They tend to be like very odd in terms of the things that you're asking kids to do, and the adults running them often have no relationships with the kids. So I want to spend a little bit of time with the idea of ecological validity, which is a particular kind of validity. And here's the definition. As a starting point, ecological validity refers to the relationship between the real-world phenomenon and the investigation of these phenomenon in experiential contexts. So how closely connected are the thing that's described in the study and the way that thing works in real life? And so as we think about that, one thing we might think about is school context. Is the school context described in the study anything like my school context? Is the conception of children described in the study mapping onto the conception of children that we want to have in my school? I worked with a principal, I observed a principal in the UP as part of my work with y'all this year, whose goal was to make the school more joyful. So you can imagine that there is research out there that would improve test scores, but would not make the school more joyful, and so it was not good research for their context. Does it map onto the vision that I have? Does it share the conception of teachers that I have? Do I think that teachers are the experts in their own classroom, or is this a scripted curriculum that just wants them to read the words someone else has given them, right? I don't care what the results of a study based on a scripted curriculum are, because that doesn't match my conception of teachers and the work of teaching. Does it mirror my pedagogical commitments? How is it measuring math knowledge? Is it measuring like how many facts children can produce in 2.5 minutes, or is it measuring their ability to make sense of and solve a problem? Both of those are viable measures, but I may care about one more than the other. And I want to make this connection to coherence, which we're talking about today and which Allison brought up this morning. So I think we can think of ecological validity as coherence. It is asking whether research is coherent with our goals as educators. And we can think about that around structural, conceptual, relational and cultural, and political differences. So I thought what I would do, rather than sort of give a bird's eye view, is go through the example of one article and talk about like how I would apply these concepts to it. And my goal is not like just to specifically engage with this article, but to provide a model for you all if you're in situations where you're being presented with research that maybe makes your spidey sense tingle, right? Like someone is saying, this is what we need to do because of research, and it just doesn't feel right to you. What are some questions you might ask to open up that conversation? So to do it, I want to look at the study. This is a randomized controlled trial. The effects of early mathematics intervention for low SES pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students. And their research question was, will the pre-K mathematics intervention lead to increased mathematical knowledge in treatment children relative to control children by the end of pre-K? So classrooms in this case are randomly assigned to treatment or control, we're going to see who does better on a math test at the end of the year. This is actually really important. This is the only information we have in the study about the intervention. So they say pre-K mathematics, which is the name of the curriculum, is comprised of classroom and home mathematics activities. Teachers enrich the classroom by installing a mathematics learning center and using mathematics software or apps. Activities included concrete manipulatives and were conducted by teachers with children in small groups. The home mathematics activities included picture strips as guides and were conducted by parents or other adults. This is all we know about the curriculum. And so one of the reasons I picked this study is because I have no feelings either way about this curriculum. I don't know what it is. I do not know if it's good or bad. And there is not enough information in here to tell me, right? I can imagine this curriculum being implemented in a way that is consistent with the mathematics essentials. And I can imagine it being implemented in a way that is not consistent. I don't know. So is it generalizable? I would say yes. It's a pretty large study, so 41 different classrooms, 20 treatment and 20 control. And in this study, the treatment classrooms received nothing. So they would call it business as usual. They went on and did whatever they normally do, which in a lot of these pre-K classrooms was not very much math. So they were using things like creative curriculum where there were maybe not daily math things happening, or they were doing this math curriculum as an intervention. It was Head Start in California, 3- and 4-year-old children. I'm going to ignore the elementary school part because I don't want to get into it. And then here's what they actually did. They did teacher workshops with the teachers in the replication study, 6 days, 45 hours. They did coaching visits per classroom, 1 or 2 per month. And then they ensured that the people were using the curriculum at home. So as I'm thinking about, is this study valid for me to draw conclusions from in my place? One thing I might think is, am I going to be able to do any of these things? So if this worked because they did 45 hours of teacher training, and I can't do 45 hours of teacher training, then it sort of doesn't matter what they find out in the results section because I can't do that. So it's not enough to just say, oh, this worked, right? We have to ask, well, how did it work? And does that make sense in our context? Same with coaching. They did 1 to 2 days of coaching a month. Is that something I can do in my context? If not, this study isn't really valid for you. If you can do that, then it might be. So to, again, go back to that idea that it's not about research is good or is bad. It's about how does it inform the context you are in. Like sometimes people will come up to me and say, well, can you tell me like some research-based practices to do in elementary math? And y'all, if it were that easy that we could just give you like a list of, oh, here's 8 things to do, and now all your kids are going to know math, like we would not be sitting here all day long. We would not have been doing this for 6 years. We would not have been like having trouble in schools for 200 years, right? Like this is hard work. It's hard work because people are not widgets. Children are different. Adults are different. Content is different, spaces are different, cultural moments are different. You know, the pandemic is a nightmare. All of these things are shaping what is going on, and so there is no list. There is no list. Okay. Oh, this was, I really like this. I got to the end of this article and I read this and it actually made me laugh out loud. So in the discussion they said, the intervention was less effective for pre-K children with low inhibitory control. The intervention was less effective for K children with low inhibitory control and K children with low attention focusing. So I was just like, oh, all the children then. Okay? So like, you know your context. Maybe you're like, oh, well, we don't have very many of those children, so this is going to work great for us. You know, great. Or maybe you're like, ooh, this sounds like all of my kids are going to have trouble with this thing. And like, you would not know this till the last page of the study. Like, you could go all the way through the rest of it thinking, oh, this is great. And then you get to this and you're like, no, okay. So again, like just someone saying, oh, this is research-based, that's not enough information for you. So is it coherent? And here, like, I have this big question mark because I have no idea if it's coherent because, again, I don't actually know what's going on in this curriculum. So maybe there's enough here, if I think there is a match with my context, that it's worth checking out the curriculum and seeing, is this something that is encouraging problem solving? Is it something that's encouraging kids to talk to each other? Is it something that's encouraging teachers to like think and plan and not just read the script that's in there? It might be, I don't know, but we don't know from the study. And then the last thing, is it worth it? And I wanted to pull this out because with RCTs, again, I think they are weaponized. I think they're weaponized against people who don't spend their lives in research. And so someone will say something like, well, this study was statistically significant. It had this effect. And all that means is we can be pretty sure that the difference between the intervention and the control groups was not random. Like, because we've done all these statistics, because we have all these people, we're pretty sure the change you see is because of the intervention and not, whether the kids ate breakfast. But what those studies often don't report is what the real difference is. So these are the results, and if you look at them, they did 2 different tests because one is better in pre-K and one is better in elementary. It doesn't really matter. And I'm old, so I'm going to bend down so I can read the numbers. But the CMA, if you look across it, you'll see the adjusted treatment mean and the adjusted control mean. So the treatment mean is the treatment group, the control mean is the control group. So on this first test, 63% of the kids in the treatment group passed the test. Or they got 63% right, actually, is what it means. And in the control group, 54% of the kids, the kids answered correctly 54% of the questions. With the second test, the average correct score for the treatment group was 14.24. The average correct score for the control group was 12.16. So 45 hours of PD, 1 hour or 2 hour coaching sessions a week, a brand new curriculum that you spent however much money for, and the kids are getting 2 more questions right on the test. And now I'm going to put on the cover of my curriculum, this is research-based. There's a statistically proven growth from our kids as shown on this test. And this isn't to say, like, research doesn't matter. You shouldn't pay attention to research. It's to say you have to really pay attention to research, right? And if something doesn't feel right, then we need to start asking some questions about what actually is going on. A really good question to ask about stuff like this is, well, what were the raw scores? Because that often tells me whether something is statistically significant or really significant in the real world. Okay. So I want to, again, highlight this routine around assessing for coherence, which we are going to work with in the breakout rooms. Rusty was making fun of me because I can't keep track of today or tomorrow. We will be doing it either today or tomorrow. But it is a great tool for engaging people in your context around questions of research. So if you look at situation B, if you look at situation A, we're planning to bring something new into your system to make a desired change. So if we think about like this curriculum or any curriculum that might be coming into your system, one thing that might be really productive to do is to sit down with your team and do this assessing for coherence. In what ways is this new curriculum coherent with the vision that we have been working toward? In what ways is this new curriculum not coherent with the vision that we have been working toward? And what does that mean for us? And this can bring an additional perspective to the table beyond, like, is the change that the curriculum produced statistically significant? So as you're working through this, One thing that you can do is use the language of validity to challenge research-based claims, because sometimes people respond to academic language in ways that they don't respond to other kinds of language, and so you learning to mobilize this helps. And then another thing you can do is ask questions. Like I said, I have no idea if the curriculum from this study is coherent with my vision of teaching or not, because there wasn't enough information there. But you all, as you adopt a curriculum, can think about, what do we need to ask of the people presenting this to us to know if it is or is not coherent? All right, I want to give you like literally just 2 minutes to talk a little bit at your table about like how might you take these ideas back to conversations you're having in your context. All right, and I'm going to bring us back together, knowing that was not nearly enough time. And I just want to end with another Fred Erickson quote. This is taken from the same article as the first one. It's like 5 pages, so it's actually a really quick, easy read. You'll get the slides, but you can also just look it up online. But he says, first, scale down the expectations for change, not for its magnitude, but for its pace. Give up the grandiose social engineering vision of school reform as the construction of an interstate highway system. Settle for a more realistic vision of school change as slogging step by step through a swamp, one swamp at a time, each swamp a little bit different from the others. Second, aim for pretty good practices. Try things out locally and see how they work locally. Pretty good, not so good, awful. Third, recognize that low fidelity implementation is not a problem, but an opportunity. Reread low fidelity as the possibility that local adaptation is being done ingeniously. And I'm going to end there and encourage you to rely on the expertise in your places and not all of the voices coming at you from everywhere else, including mine. Close.
Okay. So just to loop back, we were talking about incoherences earlier that are everywhere in our system. What Amy just helped us do is do a deeper dive into one specific one. It really helps us with this trap of, well, if it's high quality, it's going to be high quality, right? It really matters how it's used and where and when. So here's what I want you to walk away with. I think the magic of what we've created together already and what we're going to continue to create together is at the intersection of these three deep bodies of insight and wisdom and knowledge, okay? Yes, can research give us important insights? Absolutely. But it is not magic. We have to combine it with the knowledge of your unique context, and the power in this room is that we're all trying similar things and we can learn from each other in a really powerful way too. So please, as we move forward, look for the designs that are at this intersection. Is it bringing in research? Great. But am I combining it with my own unique knowledge of my context? Am I combining it with insights and wisdom from my colleagues in other contexts? That's where we're going to actually create change. Because our systems aren't designed, and as I think I hit on a little bit earlier, we don't actually have great research on really designing systems for teachers to do something fundamentally different. That is not what's typically researched. We have a lot of research on studies in classrooms and not that much about the systems that are needed to sustain those classrooms. So what I think about all the time is that often we just try to change what's happening for kids by just focusing on the kids, maybe the teachers. What does it mean if we're all thinking about things we have to do at every level of the system in fundamentally new ways? If all of us keep doing our jobs the way we've been doing them, nothing will change for children because we are creating the system that they are experiencing, right? We create it and perpetuate it unless we disrupt it. So what we have to do then today and going forward is hold this idea of students and teachers and leaders as messy collaborative learners and craft a system on a daily basis around supporting everyone in our systems to learn into that and think about how they can do their jobs differently. So what I want to introduce just briefly, and I feel a little bit funny introducing this because I did not pour hours of labor into it, but our wonderful math team is working on a professional learning library that pulls together a bunch of resources to allow us to continue to do this work. I want to say a couple things about it. We're not going to look at it right now because that would get us sucked into our computers. But this is where you would find it. I encourage you to explore it later. It's the landing pages. Oh, that got cut off a little bit. And it's down at the bottom there. But here, if you look at the tabs, it's not just about math, because that is what's powerful about our work is it's not just about math, it's about the systems we're creating for educators across the layers of our system so that then, yes, math instruction can be different. So what you'll see is they've built in lots of flexible tools for you to think about the learning you can do with the other grown-ups in your context to think about continuing your journeys of learning together about designing systems, learning together about assessment, learning together about classroom instruction. You know me. I'm always going to bring up the traps. This could easily be one of those magic tools that we're like, now we've got everything, we know what to do. There are ways in which we could fall into every single one of these traps in our use of this tool. Here's what I want to emphasize. They are not scripts. Same with the design cards. Very intentionally not scripts. You should see them as flexible tools and routines that you need to adapt and combine in meaningful ways, intentional ways over time. And what's crucial, and this was actually in Amy's last quote, something about low fidelity, meaning maybe the possibility of really rich adaptation, right? Principled adaptation is actually what research shows leads to sustainability of initiatives. Principled adaptation means you're designing in a way that's coherent with your vision for kids and coherent with your vision for educators. So the key thing I want to say here is that all of these tools that we have built as a community are not scripts, they're not magic, but they are really powerful resources to have in our pocket and adapt over and over again in different ways for different spaces. They should not be seen as I have to do it exactly this way. It should be how do I need to do this for my people in my context in this moment. So I'm going to bring up our T-chart one more time. And I know you haven't really seen it yet, but you can imagine it's a wealth of resources you could use for leading PD, leading instructional leadership meetings, leading other work with your colleagues. I just want you to talk to a partner quickly. What are ways you could use this tool, you think, that would help move the work forward and really be grounded in our shifts we want for kids and grown-ups? And what are the ways you might use it that actually would continue to actually just be doing the same thing we've always done and not really support people's learning? So go ahead and think together about that.
Good afternoon, friends. A couple things about the Professional Learning Library. We have done a ton of learning over the last 3 years. What is represented in the library when we get in there a little deeper this afternoon and tomorrow are all of the learning sessions that we've done up to this point, cleaned up with slide decks, videos, articles, resources for you all to take that back to your teams. So know that there are a lot of pages already. There are going to be a lot more pages in there to support this work to sustain past the Institute, past the start of the school year, and beyond September 30. So know that that will be a huge resource for all of us, and it will continue to evolve with more and more resources over time. So look forward to that. One thing that Sonia and I were just talking about is we are going to be very soon heading to breakouts. Each of those breakouts, yes, you're going to engage as a learner and learn a lot of cool things about teaching and learning mathematics. Those sessions are also turned into PL tools in the library. So know that what you experienced this afternoon, you have everything you need, slide decks and resources, to be able to replicate a similar session with those educators that you serve back at home base. So more to come on that. We'll just pin that for now. What I'm going to introduce before we talk about breakouts is an opportunity to hear a little bit about what's behind the curtain at the Michigan Department of Education. So we have two colleagues from the department who are here to talk a little bit about what they've been working on when it comes to a mathematics framework that can help us as educators think about teaching and learning mathematics over time. So I'll introduce Dr. Delsa Chapman and Dr. Jen Saylor, who are making their way up. While they come up, know that we're going to hear a little bit. We will use the Slido Q&A. If you have questions for them that you would like a response to, like most of you have been doing already, just populate it in the Q&A, and I'll collaborate with our friends to help respond to answers there. After they go, we'll kick it to Sonia. Sonia will say a little bit about breakouts, and then we'll continue forward. So let's welcome our friends from the department.
Thanks, Rusty. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we sleeping? Are we frozen? Combination of both. Well, it is our pleasure to be here with you today. We just want to share at a very high level the work that we've been doing, which very much aligns to our collaborative partners with MAISA as it relates to mathematics instruction. Earlier this year, the Michigan Department of Education launched the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, which we fondly refer to as OCI, within the Division of Assessment, School Improvement, and System Support to enhance statewide support for teaching and learning. That is the division that I serve as Deputy Superintendent for. Through the work of the Education Experiences and Literacy Units, the education experiences would include mathematics, social studies, and science. OCI's mission is to put students first through engaging, effective, and equitable learning experiences by providing support to local education agencies and educators such as yourselves. OCI provides core supports such as academic standards, graduation requirements, research-based instructional methods, curriculum resources, innovative programming, and equitable learning experiences for all students. Across this broader work, OCI is focused on bringing student-centered learning to life through practical resources, guidance, technical assistance, and direct support. One key resource currently in development is the Michigan Mathematics Framework, designed to offer a cohesive, centralized foundation for mathematics, teaching, and learning statewide. This afternoon, and very briefly, Dr. Saylor and I will share a brief introduction and overview of the framework as it continues to take shape. Dr. Saylor.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, and good afternoon, everyone. It is our pleasure today to be with you today as we focus on the importance of mathematics teaching and learning. As Dr. Chapman shared, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction includes the education experiences and the literacy units. Together, these units support the state in many ways, and the graphic on this slide illustrates the what, why, and how of our work. The center of the graphic represents our why, ensuring students are first in everything we do. Grounded in an instructional coherence model, which I will explain further on the next slide, the middle ring shows what OCI does to set goals, make decisions, and take action to support student learning. And finally, the outer ring depicts how we approach our work, emphasizing connections, collaboration, communication, collective responsibility, and coherence. Focusing on students first, the Michigan Mathematics Framework is being designed as a web-based ebook resource to support all members of our school communities. That includes students, educators, administrators, families, and partners. And grounded in the instructional coherence model to ensure students experience seamless learning throughout the school day, across grade levels and across content areas. Using the analogy of the three-legged stool, instructional coherence depends on three components working together: a shared vision for mathematics, mathematics curriculum, instruction and assessment, and mathematics system coordination. All three are essential for effective teaching and learning. Centered on student mathematics identity and success, the shared vision for mathematics serves as the foundation for why mathematics matters and ensures all support is focused on equitable and engaging learning experiences. The second component, mathematics curriculum, instruction, and assessment, focuses on high-quality instructional materials, evidence-based, inclusive, equitable practices, and using assessment to guide next steps in mathematics learning. This part of the framework will offer practical tools and strategies for school and district communities and will align with a grab-and-go resource toolkit that the dedicated MDE Mathematics Framework Development Team, who you'll meet shortly, is actively creating. And finally, for curriculum instruction and assessment to effectively support student learning, mathematics systems must be coordinated and aligned with the shared vision. These systems extend beyond the classroom to include professional learning, staffing, scheduling, and other structures to ensure both educators and students have the support they need to be successful. As MDE continues developing the framework, our collective goal is to ensure students, educators, administrators, families, and communities feel supported, seen, and valued. And with that, I'll turn the mic back over to Dr. Chapman to share more about the team and the department's next steps.
Thanks, Dr. Saylor. And Dr. Saylor serves as the director of our new Office of Curriculum and Instruction, and she has definitely been a forerunner in guiding this work. As we've shared thus far, the Michigan Mathematics Framework is being developed with a clear and unified goal to support students, educators, administrators, families, and communities through a coherent, that word that we've been focusing on today, coherence, student-centered approach to mathematics teaching and learning. This work brings together the three components of instructional coherence: shared vision for mathematics, mathematics curriculum instruction and assessment, and mathematics systems coordination. While we are starting instructional coherence at the department and having it rooted in mathematics, this will not be the only content area. We have selected mathematics as our foundation. However, once we release the mathematics framework, we will be supporting and retooling how we support other content areas, including social studies, science, and literacy. As development continues, the mathematics framework team remains focused on creating practical, accessible supports that honor the diverse needs and strengths of Michigan's learners and those who serve them, which would include yourselves as educators and the stakeholders that you partner and collaborate with. As mentioned earlier, MDE has an internal team leading the development of the mathematics framework. In addition to the leadership support Dr. Saylor and I provide, the team is made up of MDE staff committed to ensuring students across Michigan receive the highest quality mathematics instruction, and that you all as educators and leaders across this great state of Michigan receive that same equitable support. The team includes my special assistant, Anne Marie Mapes, who is not with us today because she's back at the office doing everything that I could or should be doing. Ruth Ann Hodges, the manager of the Educational Experiences Unit, who is with us today. And Ruth Ann, if you would like to stand, I would appreciate that. And working alongside Ruth Ann, she manages and supports our knowledgeable, dedicated, student-centered mathematics consultants, Mr. Mike Leathead, who is not able to be with us today, Ms. Brittany Liggett, who is with us, and Brittany, if you would not mind standing, along with Dr. Jill Griffin, who many of you across this great state of Michigan possibly have had the opportunity to work with. This work is strengthened not only by our internal efforts, but also by the partnerships we value across the state. One in particular is our partnership with MAISA. To ensure students remain at the center of every educational decision, we will soon be engaging our partners for feedback on the framework to help us refine and deliver an accessible, evidence-based platform that supports mathematics teaching and learning throughout Michigan. As you'll note on the screen, we do have our team listed. Feel free to take a snapshot, and you can contact me directly, but please know we will be also seeking out your feedback, seeking out an opportunity for you to collaborate with us as we move forward with the first ever statewide Michigan framework that we would like to be supportive and accessible by all. Thank you for this opportunity. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Andrew, you can play the video. my job is to transition from the main session to the breakouts, and I'm going to try to do it really quickly. I hope that you saw evidence of that pink line that we've been talking about, the shared vision, the ways that we do our work in the early math team. I hope that you saw evidence of students, teachers, and educators seeing themselves as messy, collaborative problem solvers. So today, in our breakout sessions, I'm going to skip through, we're going to have a common agenda in the breakout sessions. Today, you're going to experience a dose of learning, a dose of math teaching learning, the complexity that Angela had shared earlier, you're going to see also in breakout spaces. And then we're going to talk about some challenges that might arise as teachers are trying to dip into this learning in their systems. And we're going to engage in a new routine, a problem and practice routine that could enter your systems. This routine is going to ensure that we hold on to our vision and not drift from our vision. And then you're going to get a chance to actually reflect on the routine and how it applies to your context. I encourage you to consider learning that you have been exploring. So when you're trying to choose which breakout session to explore, maybe consider one that you know a little bit about and you've been exploring in your context. And it might be a problem of practice that you have encountered with your educators or leaders in your system. And so we're really going to look at the gray card in our design cards. I'm going to skip this and go to the map. The purple pages from our program, the digital program, are the most relevant right now. And so again, our agenda is the same, and we're all going to engage in the problem and practice routine together. Ideally, this routine works well with teams, but for today at the Institute, we really want you to just experience this routine and think about how it's going to support you in your context. So, when you walk out the doors today, you're going to turn left. All of the breakout spaces are on the first floor except for one. Implementing curriculum with integrity is on the top in the second floor, so you're just going to go up the stairs and turn left. We will have volunteers who will support you to find your space. Again, this is an opportunity for us to really think hard on how we can reimagine our roles as leaders as we engage in this routine. A couple of logistical items to point out. The Institute for today will conclude after your breakout, so we recommend you take all of your materials to the breakout sessions. Tomorrow, breakfast is going to begin at 7:45 in the same hall. Bring all your materials with you that you received today. Tomorrow, we're going to have new friends. We're going to have literacy friends and other instructional leaders join us, so the room is going to be more full, and we'll talk more about systems work. So I hope that you enjoyed the main sessions and enjoyed the breakout sessions that are following.